One of the online business. Sorry, that just popped up. For the third time I'll say it. My name is Lindsay Redette. I'm one of the online business advisors for the Heart of the Southwest Growth Hub. Welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us at 5 o'clock on this very sunny day. It's coming up to 5:05, so what I do is I'll start, if that's okay with everyone. What we're planning on doing is I'm going to give a quick intro into the Heart of the Southwest Growth Hub, who we are and what we do, a 5-minute very brief presentation on the Growth Hub, and then I'm going to hand over to Mark Moore. Thanks for joining us, Mark, and Ross Brown. Tim Hamilton is my colleague within Growth Hub. He's our marketing officer, so any questions while I'm having a chat and going through the Growth Hub bits and pieces, feel free to add any questions into the chat boxes as I go, and Tim will be able to answer. So I've tested this, so hopefully everything should be okay. I'm going to share my screen now, just go through what we do at the Growth Hub and start, if that's okay. Right, okay, here we go. Hopefully everyone can see that. Yeah. Okay, can everyone? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so yeah, as I've already mentioned, I'm an OBA for the Growth Hub, and I'm just going to go through what we do here and how we can help businesses across the region. The Heart of the Southwest Growth Hub is a light touch signpost and referral service. We offer free and partial business advice and support to businesses covering Devon and Somerset. I'm one of the advisors, but there's actually a team of 4 of us now. We've just had a new advisor start who I'm training up, and we are there on hand to offer you all sorts of advice and support across the region, whether that be a one-to-one with an experienced business advisor we will refer you to across the region, or whether it's grants, signposting you to events and support that's available, much like what we're doing today through the Cyber Resilience Centre, or a fact sheet, general guidance and online resources, everything that's basically free and impartial service to you. You can get in touch with us. There's just obviously a couple of bits and details on there, but if you'd like the slides for this presentation and or marks after, please do let us know and we can send them to you. There's our contact telephone number and details. Just to give you a bit of an example about some of the support that's available within the region, I've just put these 2 on there today, just to give you a light touch. Normally, I like to start off with a conversation with a business. Everything starts with a conversation to see where you are in your business journey. But one of the biggest programs that's currently out and available at the moment is actually our Growth Hub Retail Recovery Digital Support Program. And what can that offer you? That's through our service provider, Cosmic. It can offer you a free website review on how to improve your service. That's a 3-hour one-to-one session with an experienced business advisor. The advisors go through everything, so your SEO content, how they can help you, much like the Digital Advantage program. It's there to build on your e-commerce platforms and to get more customers, as simple as. A couple of the other bits, just to go through some of the other support within the region. There is Help to Grow, some of the government's advice and support, which is our peer-to-peer program, which is currently available, and that's through Exeter University as a number of other service providers. And it's split between 2. So Help to Grow is either on for Help to Grow startups or experienced businesses who are looking at growth within their company. Future-proofing your business and the Digital Skills Launchpad are just a couple of examples of some of the support. Digital Skills Launchpad, as well as a national funded program called Skills Support for the Workforce, is available for you, and that can offer content. Give you a few examples of things like a WordPress course. If you're looking at you're a startup company and you're looking at a new website platform for your business, WordPress is a fully funded course that can help you and assist you with that. There's a marketing strategy course which Skills Support for the Workforce can do for you. There's social media platforms, websites, training and courses. There's also up to NVQ level 3, and this is for a plethora of different industries and sectors, and it does cover all sectors, all fully funded to be able to upskill you, your employees and others within your company. And they're just a few examples, but as I say, everything starts off with a conversation for me with the business, and I directly speak to businesses via the phone, via our get in touch form. Even we get referrals and inquiries who just from recommendations from one business to another. I always say, come and contact us, let's have a conversation on what we can do. If you'd like to have a quick look, Salty Studio is one of the business case studies, which, funny enough, was my customer actually, Tim, wasn't it? I spoke to lovely lady Sandra and her husband. They're much on the creative spectrum, so what they do is a plethora. They're actually very diverse in what they offer in their services for their business with the Salty Studio. So if you'd like to have a quick look at any of our case studies, I can send all of this information to you just to see how we can help, because we referred them, funny enough, actually to the retail digital program that you saw earlier. And it is a bespoke service, it really is, and it can, depending on what you're looking for, offer support. And last but not least, a few of our details just there, just so you can get in touch. Google us, Heart of the Southwest Growth Hub. Number one thing I'd say to every single customer that I talk to is make sure you sign up to our newsletter. It is paramount. And please do tell your friends and everybody else. Last year was an incredibly difficult year, and you could say it's going to get more difficult this year. The support that's available within your region is vast, and actually tap into it, actually get some fully funded support that can help you in your business, whether it be upskilling your staff or saving you money from going to pay for training courses, or if it's just a one-to-one review on your website, just to make sure that you're being the best that you possibly can be. Register on our newsletter for all the latest news and grants, because any grants that do come up, Tim well knows, I pester him and I send him constantly emails on all the latest grants and support that are within our region. And there is a vast amount. We're just about to launch our new Thrive programme. Really excited, actually. It's replacing our growth support programme, and it is 12 hours worth of one-to-one support for businesses within the region. Take advantage, I say, or at least have a conversation. If not with me, let's get referred to one of the support providers and see what they can offer you. If you don't like it, you don't have to take it, but at least have that conversation to see if they can help. So that's my bit. I've tried to keep it nice and brief so it's not death by PowerPoint today. I'm going to stop this presentation in slideshow. There we go. And what I'm going to do is hand over to Mark and Ross to be able to go through what the Cyber Resilience Centre, another one of our referral services, go through what they can offer you within the region. Okay.
Thanks, Lindsay. And thank you, everybody, for showing up as well at the end of a working day. I hope that at least one of you has got a glass of white wine on hand. Otherwise, I feel really guilty about this. That's a challenge, isn't it? We've gone to that bit of the party in the kitchen where we're going to talk cyber security, and that's probably the bit that most people avoid. But I guess the really good news is that I hope you're here because you recognise that if it's difficult, if it's crunchy, if it sounds tough, it is nonetheless something that we need to get our heads around if we're going to run a successful business, because it's one of the key threats out there at the moment. So I am going to put up a PowerPoint in just 2 ticks. I'm bad at multitasking, you see, so I couldn't talk and make that happen at once. But I wanted to just briefly sort of say hi. And what we're going to do is we're going to run through a few things today. I'm going to talk to you about, let's do the screen share. I told you I couldn't multitask. I'm going to talk to you a bit about why I'm here and who I am, because as my wife says, I'm my own favourite topic. But I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about what cyber security concerns might look like at the moment. And I'm going to run you through some really easy things that you can do to be safer. So my goal is that within 30 minutes or so, you're able to do 1 or 2 things that really do reduce your business risk if you haven't already done them. Beyond that, I'm going to tell you a bit about the company, the not-for-profit company that I represent, and how we might be able to help you into the future. So let's embark on the journey. White wine at the ready. I've got coffee, tragically, but as I say, I hope you're well provisioned. We're going to talk about me. We're going to talk about what the problem looks like in terms of cybersecurity, what you can do about it, and how we can help you with that process. Me, first of all. The good or bad news, depending on your perspective, is that I am not some kind of cybersecurity geek. I'm a serving cop in Devon and Cornwall Police. I've been working down here for, 26, 27 years now, with a real interest in digital. But please don't ask me to configure a firewall or do really difficult technical stuff. That's not my bag. But I know loads of good people whose bag it is. And I also know that actually most of the stuff you need to do to be safer is really quite simple. And the good news is I can do simple stuff. So we'll try and work through it together. I'm here on behalf of the Southwest Cyber Resilience Centre, which for its sins, I direct, and it's been in existence down here for only a year or so. It's part of a national network funded by the Home Office, and that network is entirely not-for-profit and led by serving police officers at the moment. We're here to look after SMEs and charities, and actually bits of the public sector that might need us as well, so lower reaches of the health sector potentially. But really to make sure that we all stay safe, or at least a lot safer, the threat of cybercrime, which is probably the #1 threat to most businesses at the moment. Okay, so with that kind of context, let's talk about what cybercrime looks like at the moment. I always like to start with this because I think that anybody that tells you they know is just fibbing a bit. No one's really got much idea, because probably about 1 to 2% of crime is actually reported. For a number of reasons, it's really quite difficult. How are we going to find someone that's cross-border? I've got more important things to do right now. I need to sort it out and get my business back online. So there's a minimal amount of reporting in this world, and that makes it really tough to find figures that you can rely on. A couple of quick examples just to prove that to be the case. The National Cyber Security Centre, which I'll speak about a bit more later, brought out a system last year which lets you just forward scam emails. And they'll take a look and take down sites. 6.5 million reports over the last year. And yet, in my own little force down in Cornwall, 694 reports of crime came through last year from action fraud. And that involves not just businesses, but also individuals. So just tallying those two, it looks like there's quite a big grey space in the middle, I'm going to suggest. The FBI, renowned law enforcement agency in the US, has an internet crime complaint centre, there you go, IC3, and they reckon that we are the 2nd riskiest country in the world after them. So we're first place if you exclude the US, and we are 40 times riskier than the next one, Canada. Who'd have thought? That just doesn't quite ring true to me. Am I the only one? But there you go. There's figures from a really reputable state agency. But honestly, this stuff's tough, because there are a number of reasons why you wouldn't report. I've touched on them. Reputation is another one, isn't it? Because goodness, if I've been compromised and I tell all of my contacts and suppliers, are they less or more likely to do business with me in the future? You can see why the picture is probably a bit foggy. I'm going to retreat to a place of safety, and where I'll give you statistics, I'm going to try and find the very most reliable ones for you. Every year, the government commissions Cyber Security Breaches Survey. It's run by Ipsos Mori and involves lots of telephone-based activity. And based on their survey last year, about 39% of businesses report cyber attacks, which may or may not be successful. 2 out of 3 medium and large companies spot cyber attacks. I'll let you go figure whether it's that they're better at spotting or whether actually they're more likely to be targeted. I'd suggest it's probably similar across many sectors, but we don't always spot these things, do we? Where that does happen, forgive me, I didn't want that slide to hop out. Where that does happen, the average cost is around £8,500, which, skipping down, will probably sink about 1.3 million SMEs at present, based on some industry figures. So it's big, it's a thing, and it's expensive. And the news does get better though. Some of the other figures on the bottom of your screen are from big suppliers across the world of cybersecurity. So Verizon is one such company, and they probably see the extent of cyber threat and cyber attack through their monitoring systems far better than government or policing does. This year they produced a report which set out really clearly that 3% of breaches were down to a system vulnerability. You know, these really complicated things that I didn't know about, I don't quite understand, but someone's inside my system. That's 3% of attacks. Good news, I think, depending on your perspective, is that 85% of breaches were somebody doing something wrong, not updating, clicking on something that they shouldn't, falling for a scam that they could have avoided, giving somebody details that they really oughtn't to have done. Now that kind of feels like a bit of a worry, doesn't it? But the good news is, if 85% of it is about you and me and us, we probably can do some really simple stuff that isn't massively technical to try and significantly reduce our threat of falling victim to cybercrime. The last point that I'm going to cover on this slide, just at the bottom there, ransomware. You'll have heard about ransomware. We'll talk about it more in a moment. The thing where effectively I shut down your computer remotely and say, give me money or else. It's been massively increasing in recent years, and last year was in itself a record-breaking year with the most ransomware since time began and records began. Already that's been surpassed in the first 6 months of this year. So if we extrapolate, it's likely to at least double this year based on last. So if you think you were seeing lots of cybercrime headlines previously, you'll be seeing more into the future. It'd be like the whole Brexit discussion all over again. Let's talk about some of the kind of underbelly of what it looks like. So this stuff I'm not citing, I'm not putting down to a single source, but I'm telling you what we see and hear and read from industry partners, people that work in cyber, reports and national bodies that do this kind of transpotting. But the first thing when I'm talking to you about what cyber looks like is that criminality is a real business model now. It's a really good one, actually. I don't suggest that you jump on board, like keep doing what you're doing, ladies and gents, please. But actually, if you want to run some kind of cyber criminality business, you can buy a web page. It looks like a Lloyd's log-on page, for argument's sake. Other banks are also available, and it will cost you 100 quid. You can buy somebody to do the bit of coding that links it to a dodgy email. You can buy from somebody else a list of compromised email addresses so that you can email 50 people who are either just people or maybe are finance directors in given companies. All this sort of stuff is about. And as those scam emails and that ransomware has become more professional, spot the deliberate spelling mistake on my slide, people, actually, do you know what? We even find people that speak proper English now. So if I rewind 10 years ago and asked you to compose an average scam email, you might have come out with something that said, I'm on holiday, I've got medical expenses, please send money quick, but with 25 spelling mistakes. Do you know what? It doesn't look like that now. Because I'm going to also recruit somebody that speaks English as a first language and that actually understands the way in which the Growth Hub might communicate with you. So I'm now going to pretend to be the Growth Hub when I communicate with you, because I can do that sort of stuff. And actually, it's not even going to be the kind of thing where I say I'm on holiday. It's going to say, I've got an invoice for you to review and you need to join my Teams channel. So just put your login details on here and we'll take you through. And you won't even spot that it's happened, but you've just given away your logon details to actually your Microsoft life. So this kind of stuff has got an awful lot sharper in the last couple of years, particularly. And when the world went home and started working from home on furlough, there was around a 4-fold increase in terms of activity in those internet chat groups where people were discussing cybercrime and how to get into some of these tactics and businesses. Because of that, the victims have changed. So again, a decade ago, you might have said, your average victim is somebody that's quite elderly, that doesn't really spot the obvious things that you and I might have spotted. Now, increasingly, it's a 20 to 39 age group, the people who live their lives online, that are used to swiping the phone to make a payment, that are used to doing everything online and are fairly relaxed about passing details over. Increasingly, that's the group targeted and a threat. The other thing to mention is that the insider threat is growing. That's probably less of an issue for you if you're a really small business, 1 or 2 people. But if you're slightly larger, disgruntled staff maybe, that's a massive way for people to get in because they kind of know your systems. They've got their own log-on details. And when they leave you, how quickly do you remove those? Increasingly now, we're seeing as part of that criminality as a business model, companies advertising is saying, if you can get us into your employer, we'll give you a cut of the ransom. So it's one to think about when you're giving access privileges to all of your workforce. How much do they need and how have you bolted that down? Often we talk about social engineering. I'll come on to that probably later. And that's the thing where, gosh, we all once did an ill-advised Facebook survey that asked us what, forgive me, our porn star name would have been. And it was mum's maiden name and first pet, all that kind of stuff. So we gave that away 10 years ago. And the bad news is it's still out there. And 6 months ago, there was a breach of a parking company. So all of the stuff about our vehicles was released. And Facebook 2 years ago, dates of birth, relationship status, phone number, all this stuff, once it's released, it stays there. And over time, do you know what? It's really easy to find that stuff about all of us from our social media profiles. The impact of that is that it's far easier now for criminals to target one of us individually. So if I've got that profile up on LinkedIn that says, I run the finances for my company, or I'm a small business owner, then it's really easy to approach me and sound as if they know me and have lots of details that prove that they might know me. that kind of zero trust model where you just have to check things out is really, really important. And the fact that I can find so much out so quickly and so easily means that now there's far more growth in that kind of area that targets us specifically, rather than just the email that goes to millions and millions of people in the hope that some are fooled. Both happen, don't get me wrong, but there's a real growth in that thing that focuses on you and your business. We're also seeing that where people are becoming more cyber aware, the route into compromise them is increasingly through the people that they work with. So just to give you an example, if you've got a marketing partner, do you know anything much about their cyber security? Because they've got the keys to all the digital accounts. Maybe you don't have a website and you run your business through Facebook. If they've got the keys to that and Facebook goes down, do you know that they've got two-factor authentication on? Do you know that they've got a different password for your account than for others? So all those kind of things are increasingly important, and we need to be asking those questions as business owners. Ransomware I'm going to talk about. Again, that used to be, give me money or I will not switch your screens back on. But there was a really easy solution to that, wasn't there? Which was kind of, well, carry on, but I've backed it all up. I'll just restore. And so backup was the thing to do a couple of years ago. They've got wise to that now because they're quite bright people. So actually, even if you've backed up, the tendency will be, okay, but also if you don't pay the ransom, I'm going to release your data onto the dark web. So all of your customer details will be made available. You'll have to inform them of that. Reputationally, a whole bunch of them are going to leave you. I've also got the detail of your email, so I can see that supplier dispute that you had, that court process, that IP that's really important to your business. I've got all of that. So actually, back up all you want, but I've still got you over a barrel. So the real threat is ransomware being avoided totally, not just mitigating it. Remote working. Well, that might or might not be coming to an end in your world, but that's offered some real opportunities because if people have gone to remote corners, they become used to accessing systems remotely. That means that things like, please access your Microsoft account scams have become far more prevalent. In the first quarter of this year, that was about 40% of the phishing attacks that were coming along. So really, we need to be aware that the profile has changed. And the last thing, increasingly, so many of us are using mobile devices. Probably remiss of me to have said that Android malware is growing because Apple is a bit too, so don't feel smug if you've got one of those. We used to rely on those devices being fine. I suppose my question to you is, how up to date is yours? If you've got one that's on an old operating system, or if you don't know what the latest threats are, then you are at a degree of risk, and your mobile devices need to start entering into your thought processes now too. What happens if you leave one on a tray? Leave that thought with you. Really briefly, I'm going to talk about who's most at risk. So I'm guessing that most of us run a smaller business. Again, I deliberately kept the same graphic. This is a bit foggy. I wouldn't, live and die on the basis. Hiscox is an international insurer, does a lot of work in cyber security. They've clearly got an angle, but they looked at the risk for different business sizes based on the amount that they could afford to lose from a cyber attack, the likelihood that they had cover, the security measures they had in place, and a host of other measures. If you are a small business, you are far and away the most likely to be at risk from cybercrime. So there you go, number one risk score 53. If you're a bit bigger again, 10 to 49, you're in second place. It's only when you get over 50 that you drop to the bottom of the list and things are safe. I don't know why that is. You've employed the right IT people at that point. I've no idea. But my point is, if you think that small businesses aren't at risk because the headlines you read are all about large ones in terms of cybersecurity, then you're wrong. Sorry, that doesn't feel like good news, was it? So key messages so far. It's likely to happen actually to your business. It's likely to happen to all of our businesses. The good news is most of it's about people. You do need a bit of a plan. If it happens, when it happens, how are you going to put things right? So start thinking about that business continuity stuff, which is really important in every other aspect. And so let's talk now about some of the things that you can do to make things a bit safer. First up, a bit of a question. I suppose, what have you done so far? Because what you can do is something under all of these headers if you don't know about it. Have you checked what security you've got in place? I mean, like, really ask your IT suppliers, do you know how you're backed up, or do you just rely on the fact that Office 365 sort of does it for you, but you don't know how? What if Microsoft loses your account? That does happen. Microsoft doesn't tend to go down, it does lose accounts. So if your Office 365 drops out, where do you recover stuff? What have you got in place in terms of email protection? Have you heard about DMARC? So it's a really simple kind of system that effectively adds some credentials and helps us all spot what's legitimate and what isn't legitimate in terms of emails. So it filters out a whole bunch of spoof ones. If you've never heard of it and somebody's supplying your IT, ask them about it and ask them to turn it on. Do some Google research. Cyber Essentials, there's a great tool. I'll talk about that more a bit later. Have you got it? It's a badge that shows you've overcome most of the basics in terms of cyber security. Worth thinking about. Have you trained your staff? If you haven't, there's a 30-minute National Cyber Security Centre product that you can access online that tells them about what phishing is and how to avoid it. So if the answer is nothing, do something under that box. Have you thought about cyber in terms of your continuity plans? Have you got a continuity plan? It's tough as a small business, isn't it? I kind of think like most of mine are in my head and I try and do better. But genuinely, just ask yourself that question. If your screen goes black right now, what do you do? How do you contact the staff that are coming in for work tomorrow? Have you got their phone numbers? Do you even know who your IT supplier is if you can't pull them out of your Outlook folders somewhere or other? Like, there's some stuff that you need to be keeping separate by way of resilience measures. And if you haven't thought about, just dry run it. My screen's gone black. What happens tomorrow? If the answer is, oh my God, I don't know, then I suggest that you need a different contingency plan. And lastly, if you bought stuff, cyber or insurance products, it's always worth a thought. But I suppose my big caveat around that is you can't simply pay for a risk and make it go away. You need to actively engage with some of this stuff and think about that continuity planning. Not least because if you buy an insurance products and you've taken no measures, they're probably a lot less likely to pay you out if things do go wrong. I'm going to talk you through some really simple things that you can do to become safer. Passwords. I heard a figure the other day, 60% of people use the same password across all sites. I don't know if that's true, but I know that every call I've been on, someone does it and looks shifty and guilty of their cameras on. If you're doing that, the risk is that when your account for, Tyrac 20 years ago, are they still a thing? When that's compromised and you don't hear about it, if that's the password that you're using for your email and the Amazon account that's got your credit card linked, you're suddenly massively at risk. So just don't do it. Passwords need to be different across every site. And the natural next question is, how on earth do I do that without my head exploding? Password managers is the answer. Type it into Google, do some research. You can get apps, free or paid, which will remember the passwords of all of your sites. It's also built into virtually all of the modern browsers. So if you maybe right-click on a password field, it will offer you up some kind of password. And I always take that default suggestion, which will be 26 random characters. I've no idea. I don't remember them, I don't know them. But that's fine because my browser fills it in for me every single time. That means if that password is compromised, my other doors digitally are all locked, safe and secure. If I ever forget it, then that's okay. Forget it. So if I'm ever working on a different computer and don't have that password stored, then I just say I've forgotten my password and it sends me a reset link to my own email. So the one password that I absolutely do recall is my email one. And that's a really, really strong password. 3 random words is the advice, and add some characters, some digits, some funny signs if you want to do that. But 3 random words is the advice. Make it strong, unique, complicated, and remember it in your head. A great addition to passwords is something called 2FA or two-factor authentication. This is that thing that in Devon often confuses me because it's like a separate form of identification, often a text message, and I have to run around green lanes around my house, waving my phone around my head to try and get the text message to arrive. Actually, there are different ways to do it through most sites now. So I've got an authenticator app which provides a different code every 30 seconds. You can set that up really easily on all of the big sites from Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram through to Amazon and Google and almost everything else. And it just means that if someone's got your password, unless they've got a second form of identification, which at the moment only you have got, They can't break into your account. So it's like fitting a proper door lock rather than just some kind of latch that might keep real opportunists at bay. So wherever you can, that's your top tip for the day. If you want to know how at risk you are at the moment, you can have a look at the haveibeenpooned.com website, which is on the screen. It's run by a Microsoft director, and actually even the FBI feeds details of cyber breaches into it. So it will show you how often and where and when your password and your account has previously been compromised. And don't worry, because for most people, it's a few times. That's the answer, it happens. And that's only a real worry if you're still using the same password across all of your other accounts. But most people find they've been compromised, and that's exactly why you need password managers and 2FA. I mentioned to you earlier in the presentation the suspicious email reporting service, which is the thing set up by the National Cyber Security Centre to deal with scam emails. If you've got one that looks dodgy, send it on. They've taken down something like 100,000 scams, I think, in the 18 months or so it's been operating. I think about 50,000 websites, the last count too. They won't give you long updates, they haven't got time, but they will deal with it. And as soon as they take down a scam, because I've told them, that's a scam that's probably not then going to affect any of you. So let's all help each other. There's a similar service for text messages, SMS 7726, which spells out spam on your keypad. You can forward those and your phone provider will take some similar action. Other things to be aware of, so spoken about social engineering, that thing where actually I do know your car registration and your date of birth and your phone number, because it's not that hard, that stuff anymore. When you get an email from somebody that gives you lots of detail proving who they are, just don't believe it. Don't click on links in emails, don't give payment details, go through a company website, phone somebody up, just take some extra activity to check and challenge. You need to adopt that kind of no trust position in terms of what you see by email at the moment. I spoke briefly about the insider threat. So if all of your staff can access everything on your system, just ask yourself if that's necessary. Can you keep the finance channel on your team separate, different protections? How do you do that? And when somebody leaves, when do you remove their accounts and their permissions? Or have you got quite a few still out there? Just thinking about that. Updates are the other and the final thing that I'm going to talk about, both in terms of systems and yourself. Our suppliers in the West Country that we work with in the cyber industry say that this is probably one of the main reasons they get called out. Every time an insecurity is identified, essentially cyber criminals jump all over it and try and exploit it. The great news is people like Microsoft are really good at fixing it. So generally, there'll be a fix out there almost before it's announced. Every time you don't provide that fix, you leave that insecurity in place for people to exploit. So you need to look at your system settings. How often are they updating? If you don't know, find out. And if you're ever asked, do you want to update a product? The answer is yes, or at worst, it's yes, but tonight, not right now. It's not never, and I'm just going to ignore that widget because that just leaves you insecure. Most updates are about keeping you safe and secure, and if you don't apply them, you are at risk. That applies to your mobile phones, to your core computing devices, and to all the systems that you've got. In terms of personal updates, and this is where I'm going to start on my own sales pitch, I guess, you just need to know what's going on out there. Because if you don't know that, 2 months ago, parcel force scams were a real thing that was bothering the world, chance of you falling victim to one was an awful lot higher. So just make sure that you've got some way of understanding what's going on out there, and hopefully I can help you with that towards the end of the presentation. Some quick stuff about how you might get safer. So if you haven't heard about the National Cyber Security Centre, you're not alone. 1% of businesses quote it as their source for information, but they're like the offshoot of the government spy bit, GCHQ. If you go onto their website, they'll tell you a bit about everything that you need to know, from small business friendly stuff through to how to shift operations into the cloud, what questions to ask a managed service provider. It's all there. So my suggestion is don't be one of the 26% of businesses that goes first up towards an external consultant that pays quite a bit of money. There's a great source that you can go to. They've got some training material. So I mentioned that if you typed in NCSC e-learning, it will come up via Google because Google's fab, isn't it? And it's a half-hour product. I don't pretend it covers all the bases, but do you know what? In my business, everyone goes through it because I'd find it quite embarrassing if we got cyber scammed. So 25 minutes to show that the Saturday morning staff understand what to click on and not to click on feels quite important to me. I can also refer you across, if you want, towards local police forces. So we've often got people that will come out and train you and your staff at no cost, or at the very least run regular programs and webinars that bring a number of businesses together. So all of those things, there's lots of resources, and at the moment only 14% of businesses are saying that they trained their staff in the last year, which is interesting, because actually something like 80% of businesses cite cyber as their top threat. If you're looking towards medium and large businesses that keep those big risk registers, interestingly, even above threats like global warming, cyber is it. NCSC has got something called Exercise in a Box. I commend it to you. So it's short 15-minute what-if exercises. It's that kind of paper feed stuff. Think about this, think about that, what's your answers? I suggest to you that's really worth doing occasionally. You don't need to do it all at once, but pick off one or two. What happens if someone leaves a device on the train? What happens if someone's bringing their own device into work and managing emails on that? What are the security implications around that? What if your marketing consultant is suddenly compromised? All that sort of stuff, having some plans in place is just really, really helpful. And the exercise in the box asks the right kind of realistic question that will help a small business understand this risk. And lastly, the NCSC Response and Recovery Guide, a great sort of start-off point for your continuity planning. What's your plan? What should your plan include? How do you understand when you're under attack? And how do you make things better? Lovely to have that on the shelf if you ever need it. If you don't, gosh, you'll wish you did. I am going to briefly mention something called Cyber Essentials. I don't want to sound sales pitchy because I want to make clear I make nothing from this, but it's something that you would pay for. It costs 300 quid. And think about it like an annual MOT check or an insurance policy, because it comes with insurance. It's actually, I suppose, a government-led framework ultimately that takes you through the basics of cyber security. If you don't want to pay the money, you can just see the framework and take yourself through those basics if you want to. And that's fine, and we can talk to you about how to do that. If you do go through that framework, though, and pay the fee, you get access to 25 grand's worth of insurance, and you get a kind of support centre that you can call up if the worst does happen. So not only have you got some insurance, but actually you're far less likely to fall victim. So the grief around it is reduced, rather than just paying insurance, doing nothing, and then still falling victim and losing all your hair as a result, or whatever happens. So I recommend that to you, and I'll touch briefly on Cyber Essentials in a moment. So that's some of my stuff briefly, or as briefly as I can make it, around how to get a bit safer in a world that's becoming decreasingly safe online. It's all simple stuff. It's all very doable. I'm here to try and give you a bit more beyond the 30 minutes or so that we'll talk about today. So the Cyber Resilience Centre, let me say that again, the Cyber Resilience Centre for the Southwest, you'll find this on the website. If you join us for core membership, we will give you a bunch of that guidance, all the right signposting, and we'll ring you up a couple of days later, not to sell you stuff, but to say, did it make sense? Do you have questions? Can we help any more? Because that's all we're here for. We will send you a monthly update that says, this month we have been mostly seeing this sort of scam. This month you need to be mostly updating this sort of product. And all that kind of stuff that just keeps you and your teams aware of what to avoid. And do you know what? If you don't read it every month, we all ignore newsletters, except for Lindsay's, which are fab. But if you look at it 1 month in two, then you spend half a year safer. It just feels like a no-brainer. There's no charge. And lastly, we'll access a number of local experts so that you can talk through cybersecurity concerns that you might have with somebody without having to pay for it. You can ask those daft questions, not be worried about it, and get an expert response. We do have a sort of next level, because our goal is to support SMEs from start to finish, really. And often SMEs find it really difficult to engage in cybersecurity because you don't know the right questions. We don't know the right questions. We don't know how much it should cost. We don't know what good looks like. So the Cyber Resilience Centre works with a bunch of postgraduate and undergraduate students from around the top ethical hacking universities in the Southwest region. They can do things like applying the top 10 ethical hacking approaches to your website, telling you if you're vulnerable to being broken or not. Same with your internal and external systems. They can look at those plans that you might or might not have around business continuity. They can train your staff. I can probably get that for you for free too. And they can look at all the information that's out there about you so that you understand what could be used to compromise you. All of this stuff you have to pay for, because in a fair world, I have to pay the students. But gosh, it's a lot less than you'd pay commercially. So if you want somebody to run the rule over your business operations, this is a service that's designed to make it possible for you to do that in a world where otherwise it might just feel a little bit too complicated or expensive. We will never be on a sales pitch with that. It's a service. It's there if you need it. It's not an end in itself for us. We also have a trusted partners register. This isn't a kind of kickback model. This companies in front of you are all West Country based. And if you need something that sits outside of our student service offering, if you need a product, if you need a full penetration test, you need all sorts of other cyber jargon that I won't even attempt to understand, we'll put you onto one of these people. The reason that we'll do it is because they're all good people. They've got the Cyber Essentials or Essentials Plus accreditation badge, which means that they do understand what decent cybersecurity looks like. They're all quite nice people because we meet them regularly and they're affiliated with us. So I'm not going to tell you they're the best at everything they do, even on a recorded call. But what I am going to tell you is I genuinely think they're good people. I can prove that they know the basics of cybersecurity. They're local to you and we've dealt with them. And in a world where your alternative is a Google search, I just want you to have that opportunity of some kind of trusted trader model rather than being cast to the winds and hoping for the best. So that's the totality of what we do. Here's the end bit. What do you do now? Join us. Just do it now. Honestly, why wouldn't you? Well, we're not here to make money out of you. We're just here to look after you. Join us. Do 10% of what we tell you to. Read one news letter in 6, and already you're safer. If you do all of it, gosh, you're an awful lot safer. And if that cost was $8.5 grand a year, that feels like something that might be worth 10 minutes of your time. It will take you about 3 minutes to register on our website, if not less than that. You do need to engage with it a bit though. Simply joining isn't enough. You need to be aware of the threats. You need to think about what the risks are to your business, but we can give you the right frameworks and guidance to help through that. And we can give you some people that can sense check it all and show you where your vulnerabilities are if that's what you want to. I'm going to ask you shamelessly to do some selling for us as well, because our whole role is about making the Southwest a safer place to work. And as I said earlier, it's great if you're safe, but if your accountant isn't, or your lawyer isn't, or your marketing partner isn't, or the people that do your sarnies for lunchtime buffets aren't, you're a bit more at risk too. So it does make sense for all of us to look after each other so that we know that no one's system is compromised and no one's sending us an email from a company when actually they don't work for that company. And lastly, it's my AOB bit really. Just give us a shout if you need anything. I can't pretend I'll tell you the ins and outs of a firewall's configuration. I can't pretend I can personally do an immediate incident response, but I know people that can on all this stuff. And in a confusing and a really quite expensive and difficult to grasp world, because that's cybersecurity, our whole purpose is to make things easier for you and people like you. So if you own or run a business, if you're involved as a school governor, any other charitable context, then please just sign up for those organisations. We would love to help you, and there really isn't an angle for us. And that is my presentation. So thank you. I'm now going to come off and see a few. It's always a relief to see the same number of people on at the end of the presentation at the start. You don't know me talking to a screen. That's it from me. I'm really grateful. You've indulged me with a bit of time there, and I hope I justified half a bottle of white wine if you've got that far to now. So I'm looking forward to some really exciting questions. And if there aren't, I'm just grateful that you joined us for so long. Lindsay, back to you.
Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate that, because I've actually got a couple of questions. You touched upon a few things I kind of wish I'd said in my presentation now. So I've actually got a few questions for you. I'm really glad you mentioned about trusted partners, because working for DCC is under Devon County Council under the Growth Hub contract. We're not actually allowed to recommend partners or any service providers or any one-to-one for any of the support or any questions that we get asked, because we're asked constantly. And it's really frustrating because I can see quite a lot, oh, I know someone would be really good, but because we work for DC, we can't do that. So referring on to you and knowing that you can refer on, and so that really does make a big difference. different. So thank you, because you just reminded me of that. But actually, I was going to ask about the cost, because you mentioned about cost, you know, what it costs the company. When people do get hacked, what is it that actually the hackers are predominantly after? Are they trying to get bank details and those sorts of things off of hacking a website or other? Or are they trying to get client details, like data? Because I know data selling is quite a big thing, isn't it? So what is where is the cost actually coming to for a business? Where are they impacted?
Yeah, ransomware is often the one that hits the headlines, but there's all sorts of nefarious stuff that goes on beforehand. And I suppose, like, the honest answer is it depends. Where's the most money? You know, if there's money to be made in blackmail because I've found out some difficult details about your business from looking at your emails, that's where I'll follow. Quite often, there might be some stuff, particularly in manufacturing sector, for example, around IP. So I want to find out how you produce that thing and what the kind of trade secrets are. So there's a big angle there. More often than not, for a small business, it's the quickest route to the money. So that might be about, I can close down your operations unless you give me money. But it might be, if you're a little bit luckier, I'm going to work through your business that I've compromised to land on somebody a little bit bigger. So you won't know that I'm inside your system, but in a minute you've got a call from somebody further up the food chain saying, you sent me an invoice and this doesn't all tally. And you're saying, no, I didn't, that wasn't me. But actually it was your system. But you've just been that kind of step up, I guess, to something bigger. So it really does depend. But for most people, the biggest and the most obvious threat is around ransomware. You know, we're going to close you down unless you give us some cash, because that's the shortest route from A to B, from compromise to money.
How do they get the money straight away? And as you say, it's quickest. It's interesting, isn't it? I love it all. Thank you. Tim, have you got any other questions or anything that you wanna fire away and ask?
No, not from me, but I think maybe we should open it up to the floor, and if people have some questions, I can see that Robert's got one. Robin, sorry. Robin, do you want to, you can either type it in the box or you can unmute yourself and share your question. I can see Robin's got his hand up.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether, in terms of the way this meeting's set up, whether Robin is able to unmute himself. I'm not sure whether I am either. It might be that we have to go to the
Robin has unmuted.
room.
He just unmuted himself.
There we go. Brilliant. I'm doing it on mobile. I'm wandering around my farm as we speak. So sort of mobile at the moment. You can hear me okay, yeah?
Perfectly.
Yeah. Two questions really. First of all, is this a sort of national strategy from the government? So are there similar sort of projects and similar offerings in each geographical part of the world, or is it something sort of specific to our LEP or sort of heart of the Southwest? And secondly, I'm on the board of several sort of third sector organisations, and it comes up quite often, you know, how to quantify what level of, you know, monetary level of insurance to take out. And it very much seems to me that people just stick their finger in the air and just have a guess, and then, you know, they go and buy some insurance and pay a premium. But, you know, is there a scientific way of assessing the risk in monetary value, and then, you know, not wasting lots of money on too much insurance, or in fact, like most people, probably being underinsured?
So yeah, thanks, Robin. God, I'm interested to talk to you because I was doing a talk to the RAU about an hour before I came online with this one about the threats to the farming industry and compromise to combine harvesters. So I almost feel like we need to catch up separately another time.
My daughter works the RAU. He's got a first from the RAU.
Oh, well, there you go. Small world, isn't it? So two questions then. I had to write them down because I'm bad at remembering stuff. Geography, yes, there's absolutely a national network that covers the country. So if you have contacts elsewhere, let me know and I can refer them on. They all provide a pretty much identical service. They're all police led with a similar sort of model, and that's come into place with the help of Home Office support over the last year or so. In terms of the insurance piece, so I'm going to say that I don't have a categorical answer to you, but I'm going to tell you what I think. I always think it's important to give that kind of disclaimer. So the problem that small businesses frequently have, and third sector with insurance, is that they've kind of got two choices. One is that they pay for an off-the-shelf sort of product that says, is your risk lowish? And they say, yeah, we think so. And they pay the premium and it goes away. And then something goes wrong. And the insurance company comes back to them and says, well, now you need £10,000. We're going to look at the controls that you had in place. We're going to make sure you've done some due diligence around cybersecurity. And then they say, we don't think you were safe enough. And there's an exclusion that you didn't understand in the 23rd page of the contract. So actually your cybersecurity insurance was probably not worth paying for in the first place. That's your first risk. The second way that it pans out alternatively is that you have a really detailed discussion with a company that gives you a realistic insurance quote. And that kind of conversation says, right, we'll make it really bespoke for you, be realistic, and you'll pay out when you need us. But first, here's the 20-page fact-finding documentation that you'll have to respond to. And it's written in gobbledygook because you don't speak cyber. So insurance is really tough for SMEs and the third sector to engage with. If you find a good broker, and I'm not going to recommend or pretend that I can recommend you one, I think there is a mid-ground where they help you through some of that. But I would always really push that cyber essentials route, not because I make anything from it. I always keep having to say that when there's money involved. But my feeling is, if you can pay £500 a year and give somebody else a risk, that's fine. I'm just not confident I've really given them a risk because I'm worried they're not going to pay it or I'm not going to be covered under certain aspects. If I can pay £300 or whatever it's going to be for cyber essentials, I feel a lot happier because I've not only got 25 grand of insurance, assuming that's enough. I've also got some support online, but more importantly, to get that, I've had to take some active steps to reduce my risk. Because getting a chunk of money is great, I guess, in the event of an attack. But what I really want is to get my business back online and not have that hassle. So going through the prep work and paying a relatively small sum of money just feels like a far better route to me. So I'd always push that cyber essentials route as a great way in for businesses. We can kind of help you with companies that can help with that. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think the whole insurance area is quite a difficult one for us all to engage with as small businesses. And certainly premiums are massively going up because as we all wake up to the risk, we're all becoming more likely to pay for it. But ransomware is increasing massively, so the company's premiums are also going up pretty quickly this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to come back to you on that, I mean, I think, one of the organisations that I'm involved in, we're talking, big, multi-million pound charitable organisation, and I think there are two things that worry me about it. Sort of sitting, with the trustees is the cost to get it all up and running again, but it's the reputational damage as well. And I think for big organisations with a high profile in their particular field, that really is a very, very serious, in my view, a very, very serious issue, because it, to recover from reputationally from a very serious damaging episode, could potentially be impossible.
Yeah, you're right. It's really difficult, isn't it? And that is where I think at board level, you start to have the responsibilities where you're saying, okay, if we're front page headlines tomorrow, what can we do to demonstrate that we took reasonable steps? And at that point, there are various kind of accreditations, aren't there, from Cyber Essentials Plus, and ISO 27001, where you can show that you've done a certain amount. Now, I guess you need to judge where that yardstick feels right for you, but I certainly wouldn't want to be in the position of a medium to large enterprise that had been compromised and had to say publicly, well, we hoped it wouldn't happen, or we hadn't been through some kind of accreditation. But I think that's increasingly important. And my worry about insurance is always that people just pay for it and hope it goes away. And as I think you rightly say, getting the money is only a part of the battle. You need to be able to put a case together to say that we did what we could to protect your data. And that's where some of those accreditations and that groundwork is really, really important.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the question, Robin. It's quite interesting, actually. Does anybody else have any other questions at all that they'd like to ask? It's all very quiet.
Ooh, I think we've got a written one here as well.
Yeah.
From Rachel. Shall I read that one out?
Yeah.
And then we can
mine
go.
too.
Then we can go to Roger as well. So this one is from Rachel. I'm a startup, small online retail website still under construction. Should I be talking to the web developer about any specific cyber resilience, or shall I have checks done after it's up and running? So should the web developer be looking at cybersecurity on Rachel's behalf, or should she do that sort of post-build, I suppose?
So I'd recommend that you have a look at the NCSC site again around websites. There'll be some stuff on there from them and questions to ask. Generally, knowing that you're operating off the kind of latest version of a product is really helpful. So, what are they putting together for you? What's the platform that underpins it? How often is it updated? Who runs it, and what does the backup look like? There's a bunch of questions that you can ask at the outset. I'll share a really interesting one with you. So we did a website check for a client. I'm tempted to say who the supplier was. It doesn't really make much difference. But essentially, it had been misconfigured. She wouldn't have known. I mean, it all worked fine. But it had been misconfigured such that you could create a mirror website and direct all traffic towards that. So on Monday, her business would have been fine. On Tuesday, it would have just gone deathly quiet. And of course, once we'd taken over with a mirror website, we could also associate email addresses with it. So, fredjones@mycompany.com, because that sort of thing's a thing too. So we could have been sending out emails purportedly from her. And when she spoke to her supplier with our results, they said, no, it's all fine. And it was only when we gave them the technical report that they spotted it and were able to put things right. There are some questions that you can ask. And I think just being prepared to ask questions and think and ask some daft stuff about how's it backed up? What happens if it goes down? What's my support? How does the email side of it work? Ask those things. If they can't answer it, then go to somebody else would be my advice. If you want a checkup done after it's in place, by all means come to us and we'll get somebody from the student team to look at it for you at a low cost. I don't want to sound sales pitchy. The reality is that it's quite a difficult service to access anywhere. But my own thinking is, if I'm building a business that's heavily dependent on a website, probably is worth a small expense to make sure externally that it's been quality assured. But look, as a starter, go to that NCSC site and do some research, and they will give you a host of good questions to ask your managed service providers. Too often, the risk is that people don't ask questions and they assume that the experts know absolutely everything. And often they don't, or they may slip up. I hope that helps. It's really difficult to give you a really technical response. I hope that's a good starter for you.
Thanks, Mark. I was just thinking back, actually, one of my friends who runs her own beautician, Fabulous, she's actually had her Facebook, and you mentioned it earlier, she's had her Facebook page hacked. She hasn't got a website, and now she's had to set up everything all over again. It's not only her business, but also her personal one also. So she's lost all of the photos, all of the content. So she's had to double up not only on her work, all of her contacts for all of her clients, just because her Facebook pages, and that's all she's got. She hasn't got a website at all. And I kept on telling her, get a website just as a backup, just as a, but anyway. Roger, you've got a question also?
And Lindsay, let me jump in before. I'd put a big bet with you, possibly a Snickers bar, that she didn't have two-factor authentication switched on. Because if she, there you go, if she'd done that, which would have taken her 10 minutes, that's the visible face of the community. So everybody on this call, if you haven't got it on there, do it when you get off the call. It's the most important thing you can do. It takes such a little time.
Yeah, brilliant. Roger, yeah, fire away, please do.
Yeah, sorry for not being on video. My video is not working at the moment, but I run a small charity, and I'm just wondering whether you have any examples, Mark. And I thought your talk was excellent, by the way. Sort of anonymized, typical horror stories of what might actually happen to people that we could use to sort of communicate this in a very real way to people maybe who aren't so worried or don't think it could happen to them, and that sort of stuff. I just wondered whether you had anything you could point me to that would say, well, this was a normal person working in a charity, and this is what happened to him, or something like that.
Oh gosh, yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of that stuff out there. Maybe if I put some contact details in, Roger, if you let me know whether there's a particular angle for that, for the charity, if there's a particular area they're not engaged with. I mean, I always start these discussions with, just imagine your screen goes black.
Yeah.
What do you do now? Because that's what ransomware is very often. So, and people suddenly start thinking, well, when I call Bob, where's Bob's details? Bob's running your IT. Where's Bob's details? Well, they're on the computer. Right. So now how are you getting hold of Bob? And how are you contacting all the people that are on your marketing register and your client list? Well, they're on the computer. So now the ransomware is Bitcoin. So how do you pay a Bitcoin? I don't understand Bitcoin. I have no idea. All this sort of stuff is in the kind of exercise in the boxing. So one suggestion from me is have a look at that National Cybersecurity Centre exercise in a box piece and take your charitable board, a group of people, through one of those exercises and run them through some what if planning. Talk to them about the what if the screen goes black. Frankly, if you want one of us to pop in and start to have that conversation with people around different aspects, I'm happy to try and find either an anonymised case study or, more likely, to talk generally about the level of threat that cybercrime poses, just to try and wake them up to it, because it is important. And I always start with that statistic of 2 in 5 businesses. And there are separate threats in that report related to charity, but they're broadly similar.
Thanks.
I'll put my kind of contact details into the chat so that you can contact me, and obviously that applies to everybody if you've got queries following the conversation today.
I was going to ask him actually if everybody is happy, because we can share. Can we share we've got everybody's email address, haven't we, and contact details? Everyone on here, unless mentioned otherwise, if you're happy for us to just send an email with Mark's contact details and also the Growth Hub, so that you've got it all in one email and you can contact us directly there, thereafter, today. So as long as you're all happy, and please do say otherwise, because otherwise we won't send that email, but we can send just a blanket email from the Growth Hub. Can we do that, Tim? Is that all right?
Yeah, we can do that, and I can I'll make it blind carbon copy so no one can see other people's emails. It will just be for you. Yeah.
The other thing that I'm going to say, if I might, is sign up, people. Because once you've signed up, you're one of the gang. That's not an us making money out of you thing. That's an us following up with a contact and saying, what do you need? How can we help? So, goodness, you can sign up and ignore us forever if you want to. I'll be a bit upset, but I'll probably get over it. But I would like to think genuinely that we can establish a line of communication that gives you some cyber support into the future. That is the point. That's why I'm huddled around a computer at 7 minutes past 6 on a damp Tuesday. And I hope that for some of you that might feel like a worthwhile pitch.
Oh, we're ditto, Mark. Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's why we're all here. Is the Growth Hub, Cyber Resilience Centre, all of the other service providers out there. We're all very passionate about helping businesses and grow and learn. And I'm using an analogy recently, which my clients so far are giggling at, that I'm the Sherpa up the business support mountain. Because I like that. I'm here to carry the load. If you've got a query or a question, fire it at us, because otherwise we sit here eating too many chocolate digestives or Snickers bar, because Tim does owe me one. And Mark, I'm going to take you up on your offer. We're going to have a bet at some point, so you can owe me also. We're all here to help. But just before I sort of close up and finish up, I just want to double check nobody else has got any other queries for Roger, for Mark, for me, or anyone. Just double check. Anyone got any questions? I think the tumbleweed is going, so I'm going to take that as a no. We'll send out that email from the Growth Hub with all the contact details for Mark and his team, and also for the Growth Hub, so you can get in touch. We'll include the get in touch form, actually, Tim. That'd be really useful. Thanks everyone for coming along, and hopefully you found it really useful. I know I certainly have. And please do get in contact and register on our newsletters for all the latest business support and information. Even if you don't read it, like Mark made a really good point, even if you read it every other week, because we only send ours out every 2 weeks, at least it might have something in there for you. In the worst case in the world, especially like last year with the Kickstart grant scheme, which I don't want to go over and relive, but the Kickstart grant scheme, people missed out on potentially, a large amount of money to be able to help them in their business because they weren't on our newsletter. And if you had been on it, you would have been notified well in advance to apply for it. So just one example of many that we can go through. If no one else has got any other questions, I'll bid you all good night, and thanks so much for coming along. Brilliant.
Thanks all.
Mark. Much
Cheers.
appreciated.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.